little short. Joining me now to discuss the outcome of President Trump and President Putin's meeting this afternoon in Alaska is the Director of Government Affairs and Global Strategies at Nestpoint, Tim Phillips. I think what we're seeing there with Hillary and some Democrats, they may seem like they're rooting for the president. They're saying unless it is perfect, they're going to declare him a failure. So if any land stays in Putin's possession, if there is no funds from Russia to rebuild parts of Ukraine, if Putin doesn't turn himself into the International Criminal Court or what have you, I don't see Hillary saying, look, anybody would find this to be a tough situation. They're basically saying, unless this is absolutely perfect, we are going to condemn Trump.
Yeah, well, it's not going to work. The American people know this war started on their watch, the Biden-Clinton Axis watch. It would never have happened if President Trump had won re-election and been the president in 2021 and 22. And I think most Americans, Andrew, they know that in their gut. They may not follow this issue every day, but they know that in their gut, that it was the Democrats who showed utter weakness, and Putin showed contempt for that weakness by going ahead and invading Ukraine.
Well, we've talked about this ad nauseum. You look at the expansion of NATO to the western, basically walled off Russia. You have to play red cell. You can't say, well, it doesn't really matter what Putin thinks. Well, they're looking at that. That seems pretty aggressive by what NATO was doing. I'm just saying you got to think like them. When you see that and you say to yourself, wow, I thought there was a promise that there would be not an inch eastward and they weren't going to expand NATO and blockade our entire border. Well, I guess we need a deep water port. And, oh, by the way, you overthrew Victoria Nuland, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry. You overthrew the duly elected president of the Ukraine because he was seemingly too cozy to Russia, which is their nearest neighbor and trading partner. And then you push out Yanukovych, you bring in Poroshenko, and I don't know, all of a sudden Hunter Biden's on the board of director of an oil and natural gas company. If I'm the advisors in Moscow, I'm getting a little nervous.
Well, I'm certainly not excusing Putin and his cronies for launching an invasion across international borders. I do think the Democrats misplayed it miserably. A lot of it is what you just walked through, Andrew, and they simply showed weakness. It's weird. They were pushing up to the borders, as you point out, expanding NATO, and at the same time showing the weakness in their approach, which is really appeasement, giving in the way they did in Iran and the way they did to Putin. And it clearly emboldened Vladimir Putin, and he launched this invasion. So Hillary and those others can raise the bar up for these peace negotiations all they want. It's not going to work because the American people in their gut know from the recent history that this is a Democrat war. It started on their watch.
Well, the other bizarre thing is, and I've said this ad nauseum too, that in October of 2022, U.S. NATO intelligence services, hell, I saw it on Google, Putin was building up his forces. First of all, there were no repercussions for the first invasion and no preparations for the second invasion. The time to prepare Ukraine militarily is not after Russia crosses the border. It's to arm them to deter them from crossing the border. So the whole world watched them build up their forces and walk right in and take that northern portion and Donbass. The time to defend Ukraine was before the invasion, not after.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I'll tell you something that President Trump has shown that he knows in these negotiations. He knows that if Vladimir Putin stays walled off from the United States, economically speaking, then Russia is locking itself in as a junior league partner under China's thumb. President Trump knows that, and Putin knows that, Andrew. So he has leverage. Our president does. He knows it because he's a smart, skilled negotiator, one of the best of his or any generation. And I think Putin is going to have to think through that. Okay, sure, I want to show I'm a tough guy. I'm Peter the Great, reincarnate from the 1700s and everything else. At the same time, does Russia and Putin want a future as nothing more than a junior lackey of Xi and the Chinese? Or do they want their own bilateral economic relationship with the world's largest economy? That would be the United States of America. So the President Trump has leverage. He knows it, and Putin knows it. So I do think Putin will have to be careful in how he handles these today and these coming days.
Well, I know that there's going to have however this off ramp looks. Putin can't go back and look like the loser. He'll never accept any deal where he goes back and looks like a loser in front of his people. There's an old saying, everything's for sale. From my reading, Trump is thinking about giving Putin access to natural resources in Alaska. And before the Democrats jump up and down, they let him come in for uranium mining in the United States. So he's trying to obviously dangle the carrot. Like you said, you don't want to be walled off from trade with the United States. You want to be able to sell your oil. You everything's for sale. You want natural resources. How do we get you to withdraw your forces and end this war? It sounds like Trump is trying to say to him, look, the only way for you want an economy that thrives, you want to be able to profit, well, end this war.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one thing about President Trump, when he says he really does want to stop the killing, I believe that with all my heart. You know, he has shown a desire to be a peacemaker. The Azerbaijan and Armenia negotiations he just successfully concluded. That's an age-old conflict that he managed to get a peace deal. The Pakistan-India ceasefire and patching up that situation just a couple of months ago. I do think in this term, since his very close brush with death, himself and that assassination attempts on his life. I do think this is something the president feels called to do. He's serious about that. Yeah, he wants to do what's best for the United States geopolitically. We know that. And it could be prying Russia a bit away from China's orbit with dangling some carrots out there. But he really does want to be a peacemaker if he can do that. He really does.
I don't, to close, I don't trust the Democrats at all. I think they're actually rooting for him to fail.
Agree.
So this war will rage on, more blood will be spilled, and they can say, see, orange man bad. They don't care about the people being killed in Ukraine. They don't care about the people dying on the streets of the District of Columbia. Tim Phillips, I got to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
You bet.
All right, sir, have a great weekend. Jenny Beth Martin, co-founder of